All right, Britt Hume, keeping an eye on the things in Washington. Thanks very much. Howard Safer, again, this is something that New York City has planned for a long time. New York always thought it was an obvious terror target. You might say, in a way, we dodged a bullet back in '93 when the World Trade Center was bombed, 6 people dead, 1,000 hurt, but nothing on the scale of what we've seen today.
Absolutely not. This is incomprehensible. The idea of one plane was incomprehensible. The idea of 4 is beyond the realm of conception. And, you know, this is obviously something that was well planned, had to be well coordinated, had to be something that was planned for months, maybe even years. And, you know, finding the people who did this after the rescue operation, and we save as many lives as possible, is really the key here.
How is life going to change in America as a result of this, or is it too early to say?
Well, I think one of the things you're going to see is a re-examination of both our intelligence procedures and our security procedures. Certainly our airport security procedures are going to have to be put under a microscope and look for the vulnerability points, because four airplanes hijacked in one day says the system doesn't work.
Perhaps, Bill Daley, I'm just exploring some options here, but might we see almost armored cockpits from now on? I mean, those cabin doors, as anybody who's ever flown, are lockable but fairly flimsy. Excuse me, Bill, we want to go up to Shepard Smith, who's actually keeping an eye on things from the sky above Midtown. Shep?
I'm actually down in the newsroom now, John, and want to bring you an update on the facts as we've been getting them in the last few minutes. The FBI headquarters will be making an official announcement shortly. Fox News Channel will carry that for you as well. As Britt Hume mentioned, we are waiting at Barksdale Air Force Base, where President Bush is scheduled to address the nation in just a few minutes. It's our understanding that there are technical reasons that he's not on yet, but that should be happening shortly. I can also tell you that now the United States border with Canada has been shut down at all crossings. There is a report from Afghanistan now, from Kabul, Afghanistan. Osama bin Laden's people, and actually the Taliban now responding to this. Afghanistan's hardline Taliban rulers have condemned this devastating terrorist attack in New York and the one in Washington, and rejected suggestions that Osama bin Laden could be behind them. The Taliban's ambassador to neighboring Pakistan has now said that bin Laden, the Saudi dissident who has been given asylum in the country, does not have the facilities needed to carry out such an attack. Quoting now from the Taliban, "It is premature to level allegations against a person who is not in a position to carry out such attacks. It was a well-organized plan on connection with the 1998 bombings of the U.S. embassies in East Africa that killed 224 people." Now, there are reports that the victim count at the Pentagon is now at 34. Those are unconfirmed reports at this moment, but certainly with a fire that happened so quickly and an explosion on that level, fears at the Pentagon are certainly running high. We're also getting word from NASA now that astronauts aboard the International Space Station can actually see the smoke rising from Washington and New York. That this plume of smoke that was once the World Trade Center in New York City can be seen from 224 miles in the sky. And on the International Space Station, they are watching in what is certainly a day which will live in infamy, September the 11th, 2001, and the worst terrorist attack in the history of the world. The updates are coming in fast and furious now from individual states across the nation. Suffice it to say that governments across this country are now shutting down all major tall buildings. That's the way it seems, as we've just gotten reports from New Jersey across the river where they watch these buildings fall. The governor of Pennsylvania now asking to use a Fox News satellite truck to address the people of his state. Overwhelming calls now from governors and congressmen and senators for calm across the nation. The president soon to address the nation about how the United States will respond. David Schuster has been reporting throughout the day that the military is now on an alert, which is parallel with alert that would be in place should we be at war. Newt Gingrich saying earlier that this is likened to Pearl Harbor. President Bush will put it all into perspective for us shortly. Those are the latest updates as we have them. Once again, the FBI to make an official statement in just a matter of minutes. This from our correspondent there at the Pentagon. The president to speak down in Shreveport, Louisiana in just a few minutes. John, both of those for you live when they come in here in the newsroom.
All right, Shepard Smith in our newsroom, thanks very much. Again, to restate, you're looking at the place where the World Trade Center used to stand in Manhattan. A billowing cloud of smoke still rolling up from the foundations of the towers. They crumbled around, well, in the 10 o'clock hour. This after they were struck by two hijacked jetliners in separate incidents just before and just after 9 o'clock this morning Eastern Time. 50,000 people work in those buildings on a given day. It's certain that a good number of those people were already at their desks. Witnesses describe seeing people jumping from the upper floors in flames, preferring to make a quick end of their lives rather than suffer disastrously. Here is the picture of the second plane coming in. We are not exactly certain at this point which plane that was. It's believed that was the American Airlines Flight 77 from Washington to LAX. We believe that was the plane that was employed as a flying bomb to destroy the second of the World Trade Center towers. The structural steel in those towers, steel that was thought to be strong enough to withstand this kind of attack, ultimately gave way to the heat of the burning fuel from those aircraft. You can see there the pictures, people who have broken out the windows. They cannot breathe. They are leaning outside, waving handkerchiefs, towels, anything they can, waiting for rescue. Rescue that almost certainly never came. The towers crumbled one at a time, as you're looking at the replay here, in a tremendous shower of shattering glass and concrete. Almost certainly there will be casualties in neighboring buildings because the World Trade Center towered so tall above the buildings around it. As it fell, there'd be steel beams, girders, chunks of concrete, enormous piles of material cascading down from 1,000 feet in the sky, a quarter-mile up. All of this material falling down to the ground, and anybody who was underneath it would have a difficult time surviving indeed. Also, we take you to Washington, where the Pentagon remains on fire, a fire burning out of control after a hijacked jetliner there slammed into the outer wall, the outer ring of the Pentagon. Now, this one could have been worse. We have early indications of perhaps 3 dozen people dead, but it appears that the impact of that plane actually came on the ground outside the Pentagon. So the fire is still burning there, the Pentagon in flames. Clearly, this was an attempt to strike at America's financial structure, the symbol of America in many respects, the World Trade Center, the tallest, the most visible buildings in New York City, right alongside New York Harbor, and also a strike at the Pentagon, the center of America's military. Shepard Smith has a late update now from the newsroom. Shep?
John, we have just gotten this in from the World Trade Center explosions in New York City. The death toll is now estimated at 10,000. This out of New York, and this, according to the Pentagon, that there were undoubtedly deaths at the Pentagon as well. Representative Jim Moran, coming out of the Capitol Police headquarters, has just told Fox News on camera, again, he is a Democrat from Virginia, that the official estimate now is 10,000 have been killed in lower Manhattan as the World Trade Centers collapse to the ground. We're expecting to hear from the president shortly, John.
All right, Shepard Smith, thank you. And that death toll, suffice it to say, could certainly go up. There were thousands of people, perhaps, among them some of New York's finest and bravest police and fire officials trying to effect the rescue of those people who were caught in the top of those buildings. At the time, we thought, and here you look at the replay of the plane slamming, this is the second plane now, slamming into the second tower, and the catastrophic explosion there that certainly killed everyone on board the plane, as well as probably hundreds in the World Trade Center towers. So there were firefighters and police officers on the ground trying to effect the rescue of those people above, and all of a sudden, both of the towers came cascading down around them. Clearly, a great number of the people whose lives have been lost today are the firefighters and the rescue crews who were trying to help save others. We are awaiting word from President Bush. He was in Florida at the time this all began. As you look at these unedited pictures of people scrambling away from the dust cloud resulting from the collapse of the World Trade Center. President Bush was on the ground in Florida. He was to address an elementary school on what was supposed to be an upbeat event promoting education in this country. President Bush is safe. Air Force One took him to Shreveport, Louisiana. We expect he will be addressing the nation momentarily. Once again, the U.S. military is on the highest state of alert. The kind of alert that would have emanated from the Pearl Harbor attack. And as former House Speaker Newt Gingrich said today on the air on Fox News, certainly this attack will bring with it more casualties than the American forces lost at Pearl Harbor. This is a 21st century Pearl Harbor. Experts have been saying for a long time that perhaps the military attacks of the future would be of this kind. And Bill Daley, former FBI agent, I guess this is the worst kind of scenario. This is what was predicted, but perhaps maybe never imagined?
It was predicted, imagined, but the countermeasures to ever deal with something like this were something you couldn't come to grips with. How are you going to stop commercial airliners from coming down routes around New York that they normally travel?
It's monumental, the scope of the catastrophe. Britt Hume is in Washington now with some more information for us.
Yeah, John, we just, as we've noted, that fire continues to burn at the Pentagon, but the Secretary of Defense, we now understand from Admiral Craig Quigley, his spokesman, who has just spoken to Fox News a short time ago, says that he is in the building, that he is in the National Military Command Center, which is a kind of bunker within the Pentagon, where it is said that communications are working. While the place is a little smoky, the Secretary never left the building. That threat condition Delta, which David Schuster earlier described to you as the most advanced threat condition there is, has been set for the Pentagon. Quigley seemed not to know when asked whether that was the military threat alert nationwide. But as for why it was imposed at the Pentagon, he said, quote, it was simply the prudent thing to do. I think most people would concur with that. The members of the congressional leadership, Brian Wilson reports from Capitol Hill, where he's been at the police station there, have been taken, it is said, to a secure location. We earlier heard from Senator John Kyle that said, yes, they are secure, they are in touch with each other, that the plan, at least for dealing with these things, as far as Capitol Hill is concerned, is underway and in effect. The FBI, John, is saying that they received no warning about this, no warning at all. And for that reason, obviously, that U.S. forces were not on any special alert. That's the latest from here.
All right, Britt Hume in Washington, thank you. As you look at these pictures of the smoking side of the Pentagon, it bears repeating that most of the building is still intact and even occupied. David Schuster was in the Pentagon for a good part of the morning. David, are you still inside the building?
John, we are. The pictures that you're looking, if you imagine the camera swinging to the left and going to the next concentric ring, that's where the media offices are, and that's where we are. We can tell you that the hallways, to give you an extent of how big the fire is, that continues to rage out of control in many of the offices of the Pentagon on our side, which is clearly, several hundred feet, or if not several hundred yards from where the fire is that you can see on the screen. The smoke is so thick that you really can't see down the hallway more than 20 feet in front of you. That's how thick it is. A short time a while ago, we saw 6 FBI agents walking down the hallway heading towards the part of the building where the plane crashed. We do believe now that the plane, in fact, that it was a direct hit on the south side of the building. Some of the local television pictures, when you look at them, you can see that there is a gaping hole at least 150 feet wide by the helipad. It does not appear that there are any marks on the grass in front, so it does seem as if the plane that struck the Pentagon did hit directly into the E-ring, the outside ring. At the moment, there are still at least, from our estimation, perhaps 20 to 30 offices over 4 floors that continue to burn out of control. The flames are shooting out the windows. The fire apparently continues to spread north along the building, north as far as the side facing Arlington National Cemetery. Again, the Pentagon has been evacuated, except as reported earlier, the National Military Command Center, which is where Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld is located. In addition, as far as the threat condition Delta, that applies to some of the Atlantic Fleet, some of the Air Command and Control, the groups that would coordinate U.S. military assets along the East Coast. Many of these assets will be used as far as civilian help, civilian efforts. Furthermore, we're told that all U.S. fighters in the United States are now on alert and are under control of the North American Air Defense System known as NORAD. This is a joint U.S.-Canadian system based in Colorado. Fighters were set up were sent up and escorted Air Force One into Louisiana. But again, the situation here at the Pentagon, as you can see, the fire continues to burn out of control. One of the problems that firefighters are having is that it is very difficult, because of how big the Pentagon is, to get to some of the inner rings where the fire continues to burn. John?
All right, David Schuster at the Pentagon reporting live. Thank you. Again, apparently in that updated report from David Schuster, the Pentagon took a direct